Okay, I'm live. Da-da-da-da. And yeah, we got a full one today. I am looking really red in this video, but I guess I'm not as tan as it might seem. Okay, so, or maybe I should just change the quality of the video there. A lot of music, so I'm not going to waste really too much time. I will waste a little bit of time, but not too much. Yeah, I tried to cram in, I don't know how this week, it wasn't necessarily somehow much less busy than other weeks, but I managed to get in 21 releases. God help us all, right? And with the exception of rap and hip hop, there are only 2 releases in that. The rest are kind of spread out pretty evenly. Let me go ahead and actually open. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the electronic little segment. We have 2 in rap and hip hop. Then we have 5 in rock and metal. And then that leaves 8 for pop and indie. So it is stacked. Some of these are quite good. Some of these are just good, not quite good. But yes, got a full one. Like I said, I tried. The general rule is once we hit the new week of releases, because tomorrow is the first week of September releases, I have found a few releases that came out since the 1st of September. But I think just like 3 or 4 albums at this point in time. So realistically, I let myself have these first few days of September as well to just sort of push through and get through a lot of the releases in August, which either came out at the very end of August or releases that I had kind of been sitting on. There are some releases here that we're going to be talking about, which are from, how to say, probably like the first week, honestly, that I just didn't get around to, or that I'd listened to once. It kind of happened, right? So now I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to... Okay, don't know what's going on with that. I'm going to go ahead and put the stream up. Hey, excellent. And let me just make sure everything... Yeah, I got 800 things going on. All right, so we're going to start with electronic music. Can I make that go away? Okay. And we're just going to go through some EPs pretty quick. Yes. So first one here, we have the Slender EP by the artist Beak. I'm not going to spend too much time describing this because I think you'll get it right away. It's just heavy, frenetic D in B, drum and bass. Incorporates a lot of the cold, ominous UK garage sound as well. So let's just kind of jump into it. You'll figure it out. With, yeah, you can hear that colder, more ominous UK garage sound a little bit here. But jump in a little bit. We're just gonna jump right into it, right into the deep end today. So it's got the energy and the kind of the just incessantness of drum and bass, but there is that atmospheric, the sort of hollow synths, I guess, and then those samples that feel like they could be ripped out of not necessarily Burial, but one of his peers in the genre. There's a whole track, I think it's dedicated to Slender Man. Not entirely sure, but so yeah, drum and bass, right? It's really not. but with the UK garage sound. So okay, I think you got it by now. If you don't, then you can just jump into the EP and explore it a little bit as well. I just realized too that I did not include links to, I think, 2 of the albums, but we'll talk about those when we get to them. They're not quite here yet. Anyway, that is the Slender EP. The artist is Beak, and the link to that is down below in the description. Moving on, we actually have a release that is only available on Bandcamp. This is the Apathy EP by Hadger. This is going to be another variation of drum and bass, though it's not as the kind of heavy atmosphere that we saw on the Slender EP. This is rather a more light, ethereal sound. There are sometimes vocals on the tracks, but that lightness combined with the incessant energy of drum and bass creates kind of the aural equivalent to these sparks flying up from a campfire, right? Kind of for the end of the summer, right? The last campfire of the summer, twilight is setting in, we got the sparks kind of flying up, and it's dark, but it's also light, and there's a lot of heat and energy coming off of it. So I listened to this like once, so I mean, I know Bandcamp. Jump ahead. So the synth pads, or just in general those synth sounds in the background, are generally more light, right? But that energy is still here. I actually, this week when I was going through and listening to music, for whatever reason, the Slender EP and the Apathy EP I ended up listening to back to back as it was, and that's part of the reason I put them together here, because I feel like with the I'm sorry, Bandcamp, not right now. With that drum and bass, there's a nice, it's a yin to the yang type thing. One of them is a little bit heavier and more ominous, whereas this is lighter and more playful in its own way. This is, I think, the track with vocals as well. Maybe. Maybe I'm... Maybe not. It's been a few days since I've listened to this, so... Well, I suppose I could be doing the whole album artwork. I forgot to do it with Beak, but you got a good view of it. Oh yeah, there are the vocals. Alright, one more. Like, it definitely, energy-wise, does pick up. And then, honestly, the final track here, I'm not going to play it, but the final track does. It's much more low energy than the other 3. It does feel kind of like a bit of a come down, not in a bad way, but like a come down at the end of the frantic dance party. This one probably goes the hardest out of all of them, but... Also, one of the reasons, like, can we be real? I do not know. This has to be a mistake. I think they meant 1 pound and they accidentally put 1,000. But yeah, I'm just trying to figure that out myself. It's not like a whole discography. It's just for this one EP. So anyway, that is the Apathy EP by Hadger. Really good listen. Not worth 1,000 pounds, however. So they should, I don't know, if Hadger or somebody from Only Raw Records in St. Petersburg sees this, they should probably go on Bandcamp and fix up the pricing situation there, if they actually want anybody to pay for it. So, moving on, we have an album, or the EP is Code 143, which 143 is I Love You, right? And the artist is Koreńzla, I'm assuming is how you pronounce that. We got 4 electro-pop tracks here. This is a debut release, also produced by Brusnica. If you have been watching this for a while, or even if you watched the sort of my top picks from the first quarter, Brusnica has featured heavily. He was in 2 of the honorable mentions for the electronic category. He's a very active producer here in Moscow. But yeah, the music here has a very nice balance between introspectiveness and dance, dark and melancholic versus bright and bouncy. It kind of goes back and forth. The Code 143 for I Love You is also kind of a message more for self-love and kind of, you know, it's not an individual necessarily. I don't know if this is just me either, but there have been a few releases. This is one of them too, this track in particular. Throughout this week where I felt like I was being reminded of the old Russian group Tattoo. But I think that might just be the case where Tattoo might be coming back into the collective consciousness once again. I do like the album artwork too. I didn't realize it was pixelated before, but it kind of feels like one of those old black and white photographs, but then kind of I don't know how to express my thoughts on this. Like a digital artifact of a long lost era. So this is, right, a little bit dialed back in terms of speed and emotion, for the most part, but then, obviously. Those retro synths, they are ever popular. Oh, and we're going to be hearing more of them very, very soon. One last little taste here. Might be my favorite track on the EP. There's definitely something catchy to it. So yeah, nice little electropop EP there from the artist Koreńzla, and the name of the EP is Code 143 or Code 143 or Code 143, however you want to say it. Those are numbers. You say them however you want to. Moving on, we are getting into kind of full-length territory. We're going to have one full-length, then we're going to jump back to an EP. But anyway, this is the artist 1934, as in the time, not the year. And the album is Echoes of Lost Stories. I honestly spent a long time looking at the album artwork, too, and trying to figure out if this was actually a piece of art, but I realized that it is AI because of the goofy thing going on with the hands. That is always, you can always tell. But it does honestly look like something that somebody could have drawn if they had just tooled up the fingers a little bit. Anyway, that's beside the point. Echoes of Lost Stories. This is retrofuturism, and that is kind of the rage right now. But this is supposed to sound like the soundtrack to a non-existent film or cartoon from the Soviet Union in the 1980s, so the late Soviet Union. And it definitely sounds a bit more modern than the music that would have been in the 1980s, but it still manages to capture a very specific atmosphere. Yeah. And not to say that this music would be necessarily specific to, or this sound would be specific to the late Soviet Union, but yeah, I feel like if the late 1980s or the mid 1980s, the sci-fi soundtrack would have sounded similar, but a little bit different. And I don't know if it has to do with, I mean, I'm sure it has to do specifically with the type of synthesizers that were being used. But, you know, you could imagine these being used in a film. Actually, the second track there, Midnight Mirage, I was reading a little bit that what the artist was talking about the album, because this is something that had been brewing or kind of cooking around for a while. And the Midnight Mirage track he actually composed on a PlayStation, like a PlayStation 1. So, it doesn't really sound like it, but... I don't know how you compose music on a PlayStation 1 in the first place. Maybe there was some disc that allowed you to do that. But yeah, this is just that kind of... Realistically, most electronic music is instrumental, but this feels, right, like more narrative than a lot of the electronic music releases tend to be, right? And it does feel like it could be out of a lost film, and, you know, there's something endearing about that. You can just listen to the album and imagine whatever fun little adventures this young boy and robot are off on in outer space. God help them, they are not tethered to any ship, so hopefully the robot has some form of propulsion, because otherwise they're gonna die a cold, lonely death in the voids of the cosmos. Anyway, on that fun note, that is Whispered Farewell. Maybe that is what happens to him. That is the album Echoes of Lost Stories, and the artist is 1934. Moving on. One more EP, but I really, really like this one, and as much as the retrofuturism is fun, like, I was digging this more. This is Dirty Glasses and N95, and the EP is CLOUDTEK. So I'm just going to quote what they have to say about this. This is an EP which, quote, reworks the aesthetics of the era of digital positivity and glossy, futuristic 2000s into a more mature, melancholic form. Sincere, ringtone vaporwave melodies take on a contemplative sound flashing in the ambient fog. Okay, sure. A special energy is added to the music by the percussion, borrowed from the ghetto genre. At the intersection of two extremes, boisterous ghetto and airy futurism, appears CLOUDTEK in the rubble of two conflicting genres. Super, what is the word? Pompous is not it. I mean, it's kind of over the top, but there's something kind of catchy to it. Right? Kind of got that. again, to go with the the glossy futuristic atmosphere of the 2000s. Which I feel like at this point in time, people are misremembering the aesthetics of the 2000s, and they're probably more likely remembering the aesthetics of the late 90s, would be my guess. Because I think we're getting to a point where most of the people who are not fantasizing, but nostalgia, like looking back with nostalgia. What the hell is the term? When somebody who didn't really live through a time period or doesn't remember very well, like kind of waxes poetically about it, or remembers how great it was, or imagines how great it was. I feel like there's a term for that, but I'm not remembering. Anyway, I feel like a lot of artists now are kind of looking back, and there's like, yeah, the 2000s were this, but the 2000s were definitely different, right? After the terrorists, at least in the States, maybe I missed out on something major in Russia and Europe, but like all of the Lisa Frank, you know, super colorful ponies and dolphins and stuff like that, and all of the early Windows stuff that everybody remembers so fondly, that's the 90s. So, but there's like, anyway, the music, right? It moves, but it's also super, super light. This is probably a super dumb description, but it's like a sugar-free energy drink where it's very, very light, and then reminiscing. So reminiscing would work if they actually lived through it, but I feel like a lot of the artists who reference the 2000s now as a source of inspiration were born after the turn of the millennium, right? So to the point where they wouldn't actually be able to recall anything from the 2000s. I'll do a little digging. I guess what the thing I'm thinking of is, yeah, it's, I don't know how to pronounce it. There is a word for it. It's anemoia. It is a term for feeling nostalgic about a time you did not live in. So it's basically like when people who never lived in the 1950s or 1940s look at the what's the guy who drew for the New Yorker, the New York Times. I'm just all over the place right now. We'll get to that in a second. So yeah, that is CLOUDTEK by Dirty Glasses and N95. I realize it's just kind of babbling through that, but I don't know. I really like it. It's the type of thing that depending on what you're feeling, if you want something that's just sort of light and there, that you can just sort of run stream of consciousness over the top of, it works. If it's something that you want to kind of shut up and focus in on and maybe do some work with, or just relax, it can fit a number of moods. And it does. So the description that they wrote, where it's kind of these two conflicting energies, these two conflicting sounds, it really does feed into that. And because of that, you are able to utilize it, listen to it, really enjoy it in a number of circumstances. The album artwork is a bit, simplistic, but anyway, let's move on. This is the final one for electronic music, and we have three artists here: Øneheart, Dean, Korso, and leadwave. Øneheart is actually the son of leadwave. These are electronic producers. They are from the Tambovskaya Oblast, which is also kind of his thing. And I had no idea about Øneheart, but Øneheart evidently is kind of he has a track which has over 1 million plays on Spotify, which for a Russian artist is a kind of a big deal. So, but I want to talk a little bit about the album as an album, because everywhere you go and look about people writing about this, like, oh, it's this ambient album, it's an ambient album. And I feel like that's a description that people who are not familiar with ambient music are going to use to describe it. Like, when I think of ambient music, let's be real, it's Brian Eno, right? Music for airports, things of that nature. This is not that. It's electronic music, for sure. It's a soundtrack dedicated to the life of an individual from their birth through childhood. It kind of tracks through that. If you look at the links in the description below the video too, you will find that this album actually has a website linked to it. And that's because the artists built a website where each song has a description about what it's supposed to be. So it is supposed to be a soundtrack. And howdy end the story. The thing with the soundtrack, I was not able to fully access the website because it's blocked in the Russian Federation and I couldn't be bothered to turn on a VPN. But if you're outside of Russia, I'm willing to bet that you can open it, and there's probably maybe some additional visuals or something as well. Evidently, the concept or the fact that Øneheart has a decent sized following on Spotify and has some name recognition, they managed to rope Moby into this as well. If you actually look at some of the artists who are on there, it's always going to be these three. But for example, on the 6th track, Moby is there, right? Привет. And anyway, yes. So this is it is a soundtrack, right? This is one of those soundtracks in the same way that the Echoes of Lost Stories was a soundtrack, but this feels much more directed. And like I said, if you go to the actual website, probably should just open it up. Give me a second here. Samsara Passengers. That is Cyrillic. Samsara Passengers. There we go. So let me go ahead. So yeah, if you actually go to the album of the website, they have a lot of information. And, you know, it's actually one of those things that go ahead, give it a shot, check it out. Each track, they explain what they are thinking of, right? The idea. Obviously, they recommend that content is not available in Russia. So if you're outside of Russia, there's going to be probably some additional things. But you could read before listening to the track, and then, they've got a lot of information here. Evidently, this was like a big project, so it's kind of over the top, the website. But, yes. So going back to this, it's got the audio textures of ambient, but there are inclusions of real instrument. I'm just going to go ahead and throw some of it on while I'm talking. Right, you can see some of the visuals over here too. Right, it is supposed to be this. It connects to the Samsara is, I believe it's Hindi. I don't know exactly. I'm not like super into all of that, but the sort of never-ending cycles of death and rebirth and life and death and rebirth and life, right? And so we have these very soft, ambient soundscape textures, but you can hear more real instruments throughout this, and the tracks do have a narrative drive, right? There is an idea behind them. You can go on the website and read what specifically that idea is, and knowing that you can use this as a soundtrack, right? You can use it to kind of imagine or just maybe remember moments from your own life too that would fit with this album as well. And so in a lot of ways, it's an album which, especially if you're a little bit older, invites you to use it as a tool to reflect on your lived experience and also kind of what is further to come in the life cycle. So it's a soundtrack to your life, if you will. So I mean, it definitely is very relaxing. It is very chill in the way that ambient albums tend to be, but it's not boring. Like, I enjoy ambient, to be sure. Not a lot, but from time to time. And oftentimes ambient music is really something that you just get lost in. This has enough of something snaking through it that doesn't really happen so much. Right? The music builds, it swells, it goes through changes. There's even a track with vocals at one point in time. I believe this one. Yeah, right. So it's not like you're just kind of lost the whole time. It bounces through. Oh, it's a very pretty, beautiful little album. It's relatively short too. 12 tracks, 30 minutes, so. So if you're looking for something introspective or just pretty or even therapeutic, however you want to think about it, if you want something with like a deeper thought, then this is a pretty good choice. It's gonna kind of, not in the same way as the CLOUDTEK EP, but in its own way, depending on what mood you're in or what you're looking to do, this can kind of scratch a few itches. So that is the album Samsara Passengers, and the artists Øneheart, his father leadwave, and then the producer Dean Korso. So yeah, just nice, right? So yes, that's it for electronic music this week. Quite a bit, obviously quite a few EPs. That tends to be the case with electronic music a lot of the time. Anyway, moving on, we have rap and hip hop, and I've discovered the tab limit. I'll be discovering the tab limit. Okay, so this is one of the albums I do not currently have in the description. I realize that now. I will go in and add it later on. I think there might be one other one as well. But this is the album. I've been speaking so much. Give me a second here. The artist is Ilya Konoplev, and the album is Pesney. Songs of songs, basically. Yeah, just really smooth pop, R&B. The album artwork, very hard to make out. R&B is a pretty uncommon genre here, and Ilya has the chops to do it. He participated in one of those TV singing shows, got discovered there. He's worked with Faron in the past, but he does seem to be pretty independent. I don't know, just overall a very silky and smooth album. There are a few tracks with some moments that don't quite work, but really nothing too major. I'm not going to compare it to The Weeknd because I feel like I way too often compare things to The Weeknd, and here it's not quite the comparison to draw anyway. But people probably would still. But it's a lazy comparison, so.
Залезли глубоко в разные океаны. Вчера взял новую подругу, в баре мы с ней зажгли. И не возвращаюсь, ты знаешь, о ком я думаю. Где возвращаюсь, надеюсь, ты узнаешь об этом. Мир рядом с тобой как гетто. Зато после отношений есть цели. И моя жизнь с угла в угол стеклянного куба. Ведь я говорю, что чувствую в интернете. И я еду с ней по трассе на кровать, чтобы показать, сколько дурив. И к ней вернусь, я завтра знаешь, о ком я буду думать. И послезавтра к ней вернусь, о ком я буду думать.
Pesney. Horrible with endings. Like, smooth, right? I was honestly really surprised. This was the last album I listened to, actually, when I was doing a little work this evening. That's the reason it's not included in the links right now. Because I was just like scrolling through my August, just being like, okay, what else? So. I mean, it's a relatively simple formula, but like I said, it's just not all that common. I know there are obviously some artists that do it here, but I guess probably nowadays too in the States it's not that common, at least to my knowledge. There's definitely some use of auto-tune, but it's not super evident unless you're really listening for it. And he can sing too. I mean, he's like I said, he's got the chops. So yeah, I guess if you were thinking to yourself, I'd like to listen to some R&B, but I specifically want it to be sung in Russian, then yes. Pesniey. I screwed it up. Ударение is not on. Pesniey. Ё-моё. Okay, anyway, the artist is Ilya Konoplev. Pesniey. More or less. That's the album. It's catchy. It's definitely catchy. But of the two rap, hip-hop sort of releases, I gotta give this, obviously, the preference over to макулатура with their album 8 жизней. Макулатура is a duo that have been super underground in a lot of ways for a very long time, but also kind of feel like they're still very important to the rap scene here. It's like one of those groups. It's like, oh, your rapper's favorite rapper type of thing. It's just that like super intelligent type of rap. They call themselves rap for literature and language majors at university. People who like dense text full of sarcasm and dark humor. This album a lot of times is closer to spoken word more than anything else. For me, it reminded me a little bit of the artist Saul Williams, but Saul Williams' spoken word is a lot more kind of in your face and aggressive, almost with a punk edge to it, and this has that sort of doomer vibe to it. Like I said, the sarcasm, the dark humor. Album explores modern life, or just simply trying to exist in the modern world, where the line between gray, indistinguishable days and screens into digital life and alternate lives on the silver screen kind of all blurred, and there is no real distinction between them anymore for many people. But there's a lot of references to Hollywood and film, like this album or this song is a nod to David Lynch. So, is it rap? Not really. Like, let's be real. It is kind of spoken word. And as often is the case, especially when it comes to rap and hip hop, being able to understand the lyrics is kind of a big one. So if you can't do the Russian, then like a track like this isn't going to do much for you. But there are other ones that are a bit more energetic. The production was also handled by RSAC. I don't know if there's like a special way to pronounce that. RSAC is a producer that has quite a few, like he does a good number of pop tunes as well, and remixes and stuff like that. He's not a huge producer or something like that, but he's definitely one that I've noticed in the past, and I like what he does.
Особенно если не будешь к ним прикасаться. Эти губы нельзя поцеловать, как скостить приговор по кассации. Но что может быть желание утерянной возможности, навсегда ушедшей молодости, розовой гладкой кожи? Сегодня встану попозже, пристойно в первопрестольной, банальнее, чем от WhatsApp пароли. У участников придомового чата и бегло проскроллив.
So yeah, it's like spoken word. It's not poetry necessarily, but it's
тебя с мертвым тобой поменяю местами. Ты бросаешь мне вызов, но я даже не умею фристайлить. Я тут в хип-хопе на месте.
This is probably the closest to rap on the entire album. I'll just be.
Августовский путь иностранец. Я пришел и изгадил твой дом. Я везучий китаец. Ты подкидыш как Паддингтон, а со мной мучился и Дальгос. Считай на мне погоны, так что срочно представься. Если вы мне не понравились, тогда точно пизда всем. Тебя нет, ты как будто бы понарошку. Ты ёбаный Каспер. Твой рэп мягкий как капитошка, но я в ёбаной каске. Когда я с тобой в кабинке, ты под...
So yeah, if this is definitely one of those albums, like I said, that you have to kind of know Russian to be able to appreciate. And honestly, even then, like I said, the lyrics are quite dense, and there are going to be times when you're maybe double checking the lyrics to kind of get what was being said. So, but if you do understand Russian, pull up the lyrics on Yandex Music has them. I'm assuming Genius has them as well. Give it a listen, and there's a lot of kind of fun tracks. It's actually not fun. It's pretty doom and gloom, and it's dark and sarcastic and things of that nature. But the artist is Макулатура, and the album is Восемь жизней. All right, let's move on to rock and metal. Okay, this one's a pretty easy one. This is the group Lunar Eclipse. Последний день в аду is the EP, Last Day in Hell. This is just groovy Swedish death metal. Think groups like At the Gate or In Flames. It's pretty straightforward. Like, this sounds a lot like In Flames. Older In Flames. Newer In Flames, a bit, but... It's a little bit slower than old In Flames, I guess. But it's still got the same energy. That groovy, melodic, but then it goes into the sort of more traditional death metal-y sounding stuff. Now, this has the old In Flames energy, especially with the speed too. Okay, you get the idea. Right, that's the EP Последний День в аду. The group is Lunar Eclipse. So if you're missing old school In Flames, then there you go. You got 3 tracks, which will do a little bit for you. All right, up next, we have the EP Pulse by the group or the project The Stars That Hang Above You. Now, I've been kind of starved for post-rock releases, so I've been snatching at anything that I can find. So this is a post-rock release. There's no vocals on it. What's noteworthy is that it leans into the cosmic kind of sound, but it also goes into psychedelic rock with the use of electronics and keyboards. It has this sort of seraphim creature with the cosmonaut's mask on it as well. But like you got the electronics in the background, right? But just some real, right. That's the kind of electronics and the synths and the keyboards that I was talking about, where you don't meet that typically in post-rock. In fact, you just don't. So, something different. That's to be sure. I was a little unsure about it for, like, definitely the first time it hit me. I wasn't quite sure what to do with the 2 sounds being put together, but it works, it grows on you. But then you have tracks like the opening track, which are more of that just sort of classic post-rock sound with the really fast picking, the tremolos. So yeah, if you like instrumental music, instrumental rock, post-rock, whatever you want to call it, this will be something to check out. It's a little bit different. Like I said, that sort of psych element with the electronics, the keyboards, does give it a bit of its own flavor. But yeah, the EP is called Pulse, and the artist is The Stars That Hang Above You. All right, moving along. This one. I think I put the link for this one down below. I'm pretty sure. Like I said, there might be 2, maybe even 3 that I don't have the links for. So if you look for something and the link is not there, I will get it there when the stream is finished. This is the EP Давай, завтра, and the group is самочувствие. Самочувствие. So really, really reductive description. Sum 41. But with just some modern energy and additions musically of elements that are a bit more fitting for 2025. I could really try to unpack that more, but you're just going to hear it immediately. That kind of youthful, rebellious energy, like Fat Lip, which is still an awesome track all these years later. But just... And let's be real, if you can pull off Sum 41 energy, that's great. Those guys they blew up. Especially this part right here. Feels a lot like Fat Lip. And I love the opening track.
самочувствие. Мы пришли, чтобы поднять ваше настроение. Кто здесь? Всем привет, это самочувствие. Мы пришли.
Who's here? Hello to everyone. This is Samachustvia. We're here to lift your mood. Just, it's so fun. It's so simple. So positive. Just like really energetic, good vibes. And I knew that the minute I heard this sort of short little opener, it's like, okay, yeah, we're onto something here. So yeah, if you're looking for, again, that Sum 41 energy, then you really cannot go wrong with this EP here, Давай, завтра, and the artist is самочувствие. Okay. If you want something that is, oh, what? No, tab limit, no. Okay, we're going, I am out of order now. Oh God, okay. I hit the tab limit and then I opened a new tab and I tried to put it in the right place. You gotta be kidding me. Do I not? No, okay, we're not out of, we kind of are out of order. Okay, we're gonna have to do one thing right here, which is, we're gonna have to find the album that I want because I guess I did not open a tab for it. Or if I did, I accidentally closed it. Okay, we're going back to post-rock. And we have the album Collected Thoughts and the artist AXD. So the earlier post-rock album, in a lot of ways, if you want to think of it as a warm-up to this one, this is kind of the real deal when it comes to post-rock. This is evidently a project that has been kicking around the artist's head for a number of years now. He kind of finally put it together as an album. But get a collection of songs, feel like classics of the genre in terms of just the sound. There's a variety of moods that you can go through here. I'm definitely probably more fond of the first half of the album, but there's a lot of dynamicism in the second half too, which makes it also maybe in some ways a more interesting listen than the first half, but the first half, in my opinion, just has like more of that classic post-rock sound. Not sure what's going on with the album artwork, but sure, whatever. Like, when I think of post-rock, this is that kind of little bit heavier, just, you know, kind of sway or rock around a little bit to it. Yeah, this is a one-man project out of Одинцово in the Moscow area, if I remember correctly. Oh yeah, right. And I'm obviously jumping around these tracks, but like I said, there is some dynamicism where it starts out more quiet and then it builds up, like, which is one of the key aspects a lot of times of post-rock, where you have these crescendos. Mogwai obviously being the artist that is most famous for that, but you know, it moves, it shifts around. Right, kind of louder sections, quieter sections, more energetic, more or less energetic. I don't know. Yeah, it's honestly, for a project that the artist says was just something he wasn't even sure he was going to put out. It's really well put together. There's a lot of musically kind of nice ideas here, and it's a one-man project, which, at least according to the information that I saw, maybe that is not entirely correct. But yeah, that is the album Collected Thoughts, and the artist is AXD. All right, we're going to go back to this album. This is actually kind of the final one for rock and metal. This is the album Perfect Blue by the artist Scumback, which is a hell of a name. So I found a hardcore community on Kontakte because this group, for some reason, is lumped into hardcore. They do have a little bit of the hardcore sound, but not really. But I found the perfect summation of the sound on a hardcore community on Kontakte, which is, what would Damage Plan have sounded like today if Dimebag Darrell was still alive? And that fits this so well. It's the southern inflected heavy metal with moments that feel like a more modern, slightly slower era of Lamb of God. Really kind of a throwback sound to the heavy metal, hard rock of MTV from the early 2000s. But the group here isn't trying to imitate that sound. This is just the sound that they've come to on their third album. Evidently, on their previous releases, the sound was actually different. So this is, the group released a statement where they said that they were going to kind of experiment and push their sound in a new direction, and this is what they came to. They have always had kind of the southern stoner sort of sound, but now it seems like they've pushed into more energetic territory. The only thing that I will say with this album, I was not a huge fan of Wasted Paradise and By the River are two acoustic tracks, which they're not bad, but they just don't really gel well with the rest of the album. I understand that they're there to try to break up, give little breathers, but yes. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and throw. Actually, let me start with the third track. Like, if you know Damage Plan, which is the group that Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul, was that two? Basically, most of Pantera went on to after Pantera stopped to exist. It feels a lot like that. Right, yeah, like the singing. It's in English too. But there's probably a lot of other butt rock groups that kind of sound like this. I feel like Saliva might have sounded like this a little bit too, especially the singing. Damn, Saliva, that's so. But like, this is, I hadn't thought about Damage Plan in, let's be real, probably 2 decades, right? And then I was reading about this album, just like, oh shit, like Damage Plan, right? It's just, I don't know, it's another one of those moments where I kind of push myself through all these albums each week, and then there are those weird, I don't know, like I have Damage Plan in my iTunes collection, which I never go to listen to, but just like, oh yeah, right, Damage Plan. So, like, it's definitely that type of heavy metal that's mainstream, I guess, right? This feels like the type of stuff that gym bros might be listening to, or at least back in the day. It's like heavy, but it's not too heavy, right? It's not like death metal or something. And that's why it also probably feels a lot like the MTV metal too, where it was heavy. This actually feels a lot like, in some ways, late Pantera. So yeah, it's just that sort of groovy southern metal, but more just like kind of general heavy metal. I don't know. I'll be honest, this was one of those albums that I kind of passed over on the first time because I listened to the first track a little bit and I was like, I was just like, oh, it's that early 2000s MTV sound. I got 30 seconds into it and I just jumped to something else. But then I kept, like, the album artwork too kept grabbing my attention. So, right, it's one of the reasons why album artwork's a big deal, let's be real. And I finally sat down and I was just like, all right, let's just get into it. And it was just like, yeah, okay, hold on. It is that old sound, but it's not just that. There's a little bit more to it. So I don't know. I really enjoyed the album. It's kind of simple, but it's also a sound that, let's be real, is not alive and well at all in 2025. And so it feels in some ways refreshing. So the album is Perfect Blue. The artist or the group is Scumback. And that's it for rock and metal. And that brings us to pop and indie. And I think here there might be an album or two. Not this one, but I think the next one is maybe not in the links down below. Okay, just kind of kidding. Like, we got 8 albums left, so let's just push through it. We have this short EP, Not Without Daria, and the EP is встречаемся на нашем месте. This is the first release from a new artist out of St. Petersburg, just sort of 3 small dance-oriented tracks of indie pop. But they all have their own different sound, and they're all like just fun, light for the, no, end of summer has already kind of happened, but you have like this has that indie rock type of, I saw somebody describe it as foals. I don't know if I would say it was foals, but yeah, right? Very short. I mean, you can see 7 minutes. Oftentimes, as I say again and again, the price of admission is very low, so it's definitely worth the 7 minutes of your time. So. And then the first track, Na Vershine Gore, also has its own sound. So that is the EP. I'm going to call it an EP. I know it says single, but I'm going to call it an EP. Встречаемся на нашем месте. And the artist is Not Without Daria. Okay. Up next, we have the EP Безбрежье, and the artist is Myrtle. I'm just going to say it in the English way. It's Myrtle. This is evidently a departure from the artist's last album. I don't know anything about it. The last album was evidently kind of bright 90s pop. This is dark wave, heavy-sounding retro synth music, kind of like Mr. Kitty, but a little bit more upbeat and quicker than Mr. Kitty. But it's not Witch House at all. I was almost going to say Witch House, and then, no. Yeah, I mean, it's got that kind of dark wave, retro. this is this. So if you're not familiar with Mr. Kitty and the song After Dark, there's just like a weird YouTube rabbit hole where people do like a montage of that song with various films. So if you're not familiar with After Dark by Mr. Kitty, you can go listen to that a little bit later too. But this track for sure was just like, oh yeah, it's kind of like After Dark. Just a little bit faster and a little bit more upbeat. So the dark synth, right? That retro sound. I actually don't know what language this is. Yak Rane. I don't know if that's Ukrainian or Belarusian. I should probably check. Yak. It's definitely not. There's no way it's Russian, right? Not hallucinating anyway. Yeah, looks like it's Ukrainian. Although I don't know. I will say the album artwork fits. It's not the most eye-catching, but definitely fits the tone. So yes, that is the EP Безбрежье. The artist is Myrtle. Okay, let's keep going. What's next? I'm honest. Oh my god, you've got to be kidding me. I managed to misplace this album so badly. Okay, well, never mind. I actually did have it open, so I just had it in the way wrong place. Okay, yes, excellent. So we have the EP Dar, and the group here is Самое большое простое число. СБПЧ. This is a group that's been around for a while, and this is not going to be the best comparison. I know that 100% right now, but for this EP, Самое большое простое число, feel a little bit like the Russian version of Animal Collective, and there might be something to that, right? The group here has been one of the bigger names in kind of like the avant-garde experimental indie pop rock scene here for about 2 decades now. And they've been all over the spectrum with their sound, right? They're kind of constantly changing it. But it is always interesting. I remember the first time I heard them was back in 2012 on their album Лесной Оракуль with the У нас сегодня будет крутая вечеринка, something, Dika Braz. I don't know. I was like hooked. It was so random. It was so bizarre. And yeah, so I haven't followed СБПЧ throughout like their entire. Okay, Yak is Belarusian, evidently. So thank you. End of story. Anyway, with СБПЧ, I haven't followed them. In fact, I just have they've kind of dropped off my radar for the last few years. This here, though, this EP has that psychedelic light sound, which later Animal Collective releases have carried, but it does keep the DNA. So it's less psychedelic and less experimental than maybe some of their earlier releases, but it's moved in a slightly more pop-friendly direction. But it does have that experimental nature to it. This is just like a really nice, all of the songs on this are different. They're all like a little experimental, a little odd, but not too much. It fits with the general modus operandi of самое большое простое число.
Делам твоим мне воздастся, и я воздам. Бежим, бежим, как я ничтожен и слаб, как ты прекрасен и смел.
The album artwork is just like, I don't know, fitting.
Беды не то, что стряслось.
Right? It's not quite psychedelic. It's not quite experimental. It's vague. Like, I mean, the sound right here does remind me of Animal Collective for some reason. The clapping, especially later Animal Collective. I mean, I'm going to sample us all of the tracks. Let's just be real. Because I kind of want to highlight how...
Я хочу, я подобно метастазу, насолить хочу врачу. Я хочу...
Obviously, the vocals are front and center. But if you're familiar with Animal Collective, that also kind of is the case. It's not the best comparison. I get that. But I think there is something to the comparison.
Ненавижу вашу банду, комсомольцев ровный строй.
Love that line too.
Кто-то сверху дал команду, ты иди.
То лесная, я люблю, как сгорает закат.
So all of the tracks are kind of different, but they do have these weird broken sample, which give it this kind of disjointed, again, psychedelic light type of atmosphere. Like, not a bad trip, but just a weird trip, right? Like something's like microdosing, I guess, right? So I do hope that СБПЧ, that the group comes out with another full length. I know they just had, I think they had a full length last year, and then one in 2022. So they release albums quite regularly, right? For a group that's been out for about not quite 20 years, they have put out an album at least every other year. And if you're not familiar with the group, then this is a fine introduction to them. So the EP here is Dar, and the group is Самое большое простое число, or СБПЧ for short. Yeah, really good stuff, really good band. And if you're not familiar with them, you should check them out. All right, we're getting to the end here. And this is probably the one that is the actual pop album, if you will. Okay, all right, I'm hallucinating. So, the laziest description of this, and I'm kind of on that vibe right now because I've been, yeah. Anyway, Russian Crystal Castles. Now, for sure, there's like one or two tracks that fits the bill almost dead on. But the other production on the track, it's a lazy description because the other tracks, the production, while it does have kind of the Crystal Castles energy, it wanders more into the darker electronic sounds like drill or break beats. So it's not quite Crystal Castle-y. And the vocals are not like that kind of shouting vocals that Alice from Crystal Castles used to do. The vocals here are more sung. The vocals are pop vocals. And overall, that's kind of, with the production, this album feels, it is a pop album. It's less, Crystal Castles definitely had that punk energy to it. This has pop energy to it. So, yes. I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and play it. There are 12 tracks, but the last 4 are just remixes. They're basically for TikToks. So realistically, it is 8 tracks. But still, the 8 tracks here are all good. This is the one that is like Crystal Castles, so we'll just open with that. Not necessarily Crystal Castles' first album, the later ones, but I mean, I guess I could put this in the electronic section too. It does have that electronic pop energy, but not all of them have that Crystal Castle sound. Not all of them play either. All right, I feel like I might be hallucinating, but I'm pretty sure I had problems playing this album as well when I was listening to it, so realistically, I probably should have put this in the electronic section because it definitely has a lot more of the electronic energy, but it is just that kind of like dark electro vibe as well. But it is like lyrically, vocally, it is well in pop territory, so it's I felt like this was gonna be either really, really cringe or just super pretentious based on the artwork and kind of stuff, but it's catchy. And the production is good. The Encasator, who is the guy responsible for it, knows what he's doing. This is the lead single off of it too, which is probably like the most direct pop song on the entire album. So I guess, yeah, if I can call Самое большое простое число Russian Animal Collective, I'm gonna call Kill Eva and Encasator Crystal Castles, the Russian version. But just a little less punk, a lot more pop. But yeah, that is, like I said, that's Kill Eva, or Yeva, Encasator, the two of them together, and the album is Seven Heaven, which they could have probably consulted that seventh heaven is the term in English, but that's okay. That happens. Lost in translation a little bit. Okay, now we're moving just into kind of more classic indie territory. Up next, we have the artist Zhuravlye, and the album is Серебряный Album. It's kind of an interesting album. I wasn't quite sure what to do with this. This is going to be interesting, too, for people who maybe aren't so familiar with the Russian rock sound. This is a group of St. Petersburg artists who describe their sound as full-fledged guitar rock in the spirit of post-Britpop of the 2000s, which definitely can be heard. There are some of these arena-sized choruses that shoot for Muse territory. But the heart of the album is this melancholic, introverted indie rock, with the sound in those sections and in those tracks leaning towards the sound of Russian rock more often than not, which is a sound that I can't really accurately describe, but it does feel like something that is markedly different from the rock sound of like the US or the UK or the EU in general. I'll be honest, when I first listened to this album, I was a little bit on the fence about it. I was like, just like, but it is one of those that when I listened to it a second time, it clicked for me. And I feel like this is a pretty understated and almost certainly underappreciated kind of indie rock album that we have right here. So I want to, like, this song right here, when I was talking about those choruses that feel like they're pushing towards Muse territory, this is one of such tracks.
Не срываться на крик, отправь меня за борт, оставь меня мной. Я кусаюсь не больно и питаюсь собой.
I'm gonna try to get to the... I feel like this is where we kind of get into that like big arena sounding rock. I feel like you've heard these types of choruses. If you listen to Muse before, it's like really big. And like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually kind of a nice contrast to the rest of the kind of smaller, more personal sounds on the tracks. But right, like this maybe fits a little bit with that sort of post-Brit pop sound. Like I guess it would be a group like Keen or maybe like Maximo Park, something like that. The singer does remind me a lot of the vocalist from Muse, even here, when he's not doing the like huge choruses. So I guess if you like Muse, you might enjoy this quite a bit too. I wonder if that's intentional, I don't know. All right, I'm only going to hit, like, I'm going to be kind of burning through these last ones, unfortunately, even though they probably deserve a little bit more time, but I think you get the idea. It's just, yeah, it's nice. Russian Muse, I'm just distilling all of them down to, like, the most basic comparisons I can possibly make. No, this is, Zhuravli here have really kind of an interesting sound. It's an interesting album. Like I said, I didn't quite get it at first, but when it finally clicked, it all clicked, right? Like the second time going through the album, I understood what the sound was. I think that's what it was. The first time is I was listening to it, I didn't really get what it was, and then I did. And when you do kind of hear that sort of post-Britpop, if you think Muse, then it does start to make a little bit more sense. But it's not as bombastic as Muse. It's dialed back. It's more introverted, and it's good. Like, I don't really like modern Muse, probably because it has gotten too bombastic, whereas their older stuff, where it was a little bit more dialed back and a little bit more subdued, still is really enjoyable. So yeah, that is the album Serebryny Album, and again, the artist is Zhuravli. Okay, we got 3 left. And then this one is the Cat album. Yay! So this is the album Черно-белый, and the group is MOSKWITCH, which is kind of a play on words for the term for Muscovite in Russian, MOSKWITCH. So MOSKWITCH, MOSKWITCH. This is a Russian rock supergroup of sorts. The album was made by 20 different artists working together over the last 2 years to create this honestly great Russian indie rock album, which has a more traditional folk sound, and that is thanks to the heavy usage of the button accordion. And most tracks actually have multiple layers of the button accordion on there. It's very difficult to miss. The mood here is all over the place. I think that's probably due to the fact that there's so many different artists that worked on this. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and play a little bit. I feel like this is a good one to start with. The title track. Yes, there we go. The button accordion. But it feels good, right? You're like, why would you put a button accordion on it? There you go. If you know how to use it. This definitely has like that Russian rock type of sound as well. We got a track here too with Juna. I actually talked about Juna in one of their albums a few weeks ago. For those of you who might recall, this album Mania, we talked about it in August, actually, in the start of August. So they are also featured here.
Не победить в компьютерном бою.
There's the button accordion again. The chorus is typically boiled down to a single word. Song. That's fine. Easy to remember. Right, again, the sort of like one-word chorus, but there's also a cover of Psyche, the sort of like Russian nu metal group, which is kind of an interesting take as well. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, we've seen the button accordion featured on a number of albums so far this year. Most of them have been metal though, right? Like I'm just gonna... So hearing it used so extensively here, and used so smartly, like in it fits so well. It makes the album like really fun to listen to because it's so different for that reason. Kind of goes back and forth from one audio channel to the other. So yeah, honestly, really good kind of indie Russian rock album. Really interesting musically, a lot of sort of traditional motifs and sounds, but also just really upbeat and energetic and just a really fun time. And it's got a cat on the album cover. So, hey, so many good things happening here. The album is Черно-белый and the group is MOSKWITCH. All right. I'm actually going to be honest, too, with I don't really have a top pick of the week. I just kind of put things in order. Like all of these, especially these last 3 albums, realistically, any of them could have been the top pick. Yeah, like I really enjoyed all of them. But so I just wanted to throw that out there too. I don't really have like a clear, definitive top pick this week. It's just kind of the order that they got put in for whatever reason. All right, up next we have the album Iskra, and the artist is BRIGHTMN, Bright Moon, maybe? I don't know. BRIGHTMN. So 4 Russian musicians who now all live in separate countries. One of them is in Russia, one's in Dubai, one's in the Netherlands, and one is in Armenia. They recorded this album from their respective countries, and they put it all together. It's an indie pop rock album that it's kind of like equal parts everything, and alt J, but there are moments that sound a little bit like hot chip, and by and large, the music has the mainstream pop sensibilities of a group like Imagine Dragons. This is an album which realistically should appeal to everyone, partly because it sounds like a lot of other things, but that doesn't make it any less well produced or any less fun to listen to. It's just like a really good, well put together album. It even kind of feels like an Imagine Dragons type of album artwork, right? Something along those lines. But like the singing and the delivery here feels a lot like Everything or Alt J. So it runs the gamut of radio-friendly pop rock, right? It feels super slick in terms of production. Vocals are also really smooth, and everything's layered together very, very well. Like I said, this is the type of music that is kind of designed to appeal to everyone, but that doesn't really make it a bad thing necessarily. All right. So yeah, that is the album Iskra. The group is BRIGHTMN, Bright Moon, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to read that, but BRIGHTMN. And yeah, nice, really slick, nicely produced. Yeah, actually, Kauf. It does feel a little bit like that too. Yeah, there's actually probably some other groups that I hadn't really thought of that would fall under that. Maybe there's like an Icelandic group too that begins with an M, and I cannot think of their name because I haven't listened to them in like a decade. But maybe Mew, MEW, something like that. But yeah, it's just like, it's really pleasant. It's very chill. There's like a nice energy to it. But all right, final album. We've made it 21. We have the group СРУБ or СРУБ, СРУБ, and the album. I love the album title, Yeli Živika. I'm not entirely sure where I'm supposed to put the stress mark here because this is a play on words. There in Russian, there is the word for blackberry is Yezhivika, which you can see here, Yezhivika. But the addition of the yele, the le here, gives us the phrase Yeli Živ, which is like barely alive, right? So Yeli Živika is this kind of play on words. And I love it. It took me a second to catch on to it when I was listening to it, and I looked at it for a second. I was like, oh, that's good. Okay, so this, I've actually seen СРУБ mentioned. Yeah, the name's great. I've actually seen this group mentioned off and on in music communities. They're out of Novosibirsk, but I've seen them in like the past few years when people are discussing new releases. But only after the group put out 11 other LPs and 3 other EPs. Here on their 12th album, have I finally gotten around to listening to the group. And it's kind of a shame that it took me this long to get around to doing it, to discovering them. The group describes its sound as folk post-punk. And that's honestly the exact same thought that came into my head before even going to their socials to sort of look into them a little bit more. The album artwork is perfect here. It's got like the kind of doom and gloom of Khrushchevka in a long-forgotten Soviet Monogord that's slowly being reclaimed by the Siberian taiga. But yeah, it's got that atmosphere, but it gets woven together with rhythms and instruments that would have been played at hearths and firesides at celebrations in those very same taiga centuries ago. So it's like this mix of the sort of traditional sound with the post-Soviet doom and gloom. I'll just play a little bit. It kind of makes itself clear quite quickly. So we got the doom and gloom. Very oppressive. Right, but the rhythm, the singing style, right, feels more in the traditional vein. Almost feels a little bit like David Byrne off of Stop Making Sense. Right? You can hear that, yeah? Or off Psycho Killer. So, it's definitely post-punk. That is the core of it, but a lot of the traditional post-punk fixtures have been stripped aside or augmented. I honestly, for the life of me, cannot remember which track I'm trying to think of now, which definitely is very folk sounding at the same time. Probably should put it in my notes, but oops. it's not this track. It's a good track, but this one. Right. It's got a little bit more traditional in terms of rhythms and singing. But I'm just bouncing around because I feel like this is probably, yeah, the second track. I probably should have checked that. Typically earlier into the album is when they have their catchier, but yeah, this is one that definitely feels more folk as well. I mean, probably the inclusion of the acoustic guitar, but this is the third track. So yeah, it is by and large, it is post-punk, but there's just enough of something else in there that, yeah, there is some pop in here, to be sure. New wave, yeah, new wave makes sense, but I feel like new wave and post-punk are often very closely related in a lot of ways because they did kind of come up at the same time, relatively speaking. Like the use of the bells here in the background. Like it's not a direct merger of sort of folk and post-punk, but it's just an interesting take on the post-punk category, and it does make for a very interesting listen. More accordion. I think this is a more traditional accordion though. Not the button accordion, but I'm not an accordion expert, so. So yes, that is the artist, or that is the group СРУБ, and the album Yeli Živika. I don't know where to put the stress mark there, because it's kind of two things. Yeah. I can't say it's my top pick for the week because honestly, the last few albums have all been really good, and they're out of all of the last 3 or 4, there wasn't one that necessarily stood head and shoulders above the rest. They were all really good. It was one of those weeks where I'm gonna go ahead and get us back here. It was one of those weeks where I can't say that there were just a lot of good albums. Wasn't necessarily one that stood out stronger than the rest. That might partially just be because I managed to get through so much music. If I had not gotten through some of those later albums, then obviously one of them would have stood in front of the others. But I listened to a lot, and there was a lot of stuff that had sort of gotten stuck in the filter, in the backlog for August. But that's it. August is done. We move on to September. Tomorrow is the first actual release window for September. So next Thursday we'll only be looking at September music. That's the plan. It's always how I try to do it. Anyway, yeah, it's super long, but there were a lot of albums. So realistically, theoretically, you should have found something because it really was all over the place this week with electronic music, with rap and hip hop was obviously a little bit, there wasn't too much there, but rock and metal, pop and indie, in all of the various categories, there were a variety of sounds. So there should have been something that caught your fancy, or at least sounded a little bit interesting. I'm going to go back here in just a few minutes after I finish up the stream. I'm going to go back and make sure that all of the links are there, because like I said, I'm pretty sure one or two of those albums that I listened to not long before going live, I did not put the links in the description. So those will be there in like a few minutes. But yeah, that's it. I'll be back next Thursday at 10 p.m. again. Probably not with 21 albums. Let's be real. I will. I also listened to probably like 7 other albums that I just did not bother to even put. So I honestly do not know what was going on this week. How I meant it was wild. Probably not going to do that next week. So next week, be back at 10. My brain is cooked right now. Be back at 10 p.m. next Thursday to do the first week of September releases. And then I'll be back on Sunday evening and next Wednesday evening as well at 9 p.m. Moscow time to do my little roundup of news from here in Russia and also answer any questions. Last night, I addressed a question that was connected to a young man from Pakistan who had some questions about like what life was like here and things connected to education and work. So yeah, if there are any of those questions in the future too, I'll be trying to answer those. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up because, like I said, my brain is cooked and my eyes are cooked and everything. It's almost midnight. Everyone have a good evening or good afternoon, whatever time of the day it is. Y'all take care of yourselves. I will see you when I see you. And until then, пока-пока.